Good morning, everybody. I call to order this Saturday meeting of the Cincinnati Public School Board. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I'm going to ask Treasurer Wagner to call the roll.
Ms. Bolton? Present. Mr. Craig?
Present.
Ms. Jones? Here. Dr. Moffett? Yes. Mr. Borowski?
Here.
Mrs. Weinberg? Here. President Lindy?
Here. We have a packed day today. We're going to start the morning, though, with an update to the public on our commitment to return to in-person learning on the 24th of January. And the interim superintendent and her team are here to share an update with us and with the community.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We will present on our health and safety update. There's the PowerPoint. We can go to the next slide, please. Just want to take the opportunity to thank our parents, families, and students. We have 4 more days of remote learning instructional days. We are committed to returning to in-person learning on January 24th, and we will be fully prepared to receive students and staff. 3 more slides, please. If you can start on what CPS is doing during this time. So instructionally, we are taking attendance remotely, and then principals are virtually monitoring classrooms and confirming that lessons are on Schoology. Staffing, we're all hands on deck. Early evidence that teacher attendance improved and sub-fill rate increased while in virtual, and we're also doubling down on hiring. And we are increasing the number of subs and including payment of background checks. We are working with our parents and partners. When we return, we have other resources to support in the classroom, and then also safety protocols. So you will hear about staffing, our parent and partners, and also safety protocols. Next up is Assistant Superintendent Bunty, who will start off with the community data.
Good morning. So if we look at our community data, we can see that it is still bouncing around a bit rather. So on the 6th, we had that high of 985, and on the 13th, we did see a little bit of a drop. Please note, though, it still peaks and valleys. And on the next slide, you can see that that community spread that is COVID certainly impacts not only CPS, but school districts around the region. Next slide, please. We are certainly not alone in staffing shortages and our need for substitutes. On the next slide, you can see where we are in terms of our district and how the community spread is impacting us specifically here in CPS. So Wednesday 112 and Thursday 113 were when we shifted to remote, and you can see the improvement during of staff attendance during that time. On the next slide, please, you can see our current fill rate for substitutes. The 12th and the 13th were remote days, and so on those days we were averaging about a need of unfilled substitutes in the low 60s. It's very clear that we need more than the 500 plus subs that we already have, and so we are actively recruiting. On the next slide, you can see what we are doing to reach out to those folks who we so desperately need. So first, we are surveying our current and former substitute teachers and personally inviting those who have not actively subbed in the last 6 weeks to come back to work. We are providing financial incentives through grant funding so that at the end of the month, if you've subbed every single day, you'll get $150 bonus. If you subbed during 2 weeks of that month, you will receive $75. We are implementing a market plan, which includes sharing our application process with partner networks such as All Children Thrive. And we are continuing to actively work with our partners. In terms of building partnerships, one of the ones that we are really excited about is our Hamilton County Educational Services Center. who is providing supplemental support to districts around our region in the area of substitute teachers. And finally, we are incredibly grateful for those substitutes who are here with us. And so we are providing professional development to them, just as we do for our teachers, and implementing a recognition program to say thank you for the very hard work that they do each and every day. So we are incredibly grateful for those who have already applied, but we still need you if you are thinking about becoming a substitute. What are the requirements? Just a reminder that before you had to have a bachelor's degree. But during this time, the governor has said and the legislature has said that they will waive that and accept an associate's degree or 48 credit hours. You also have to have that ODE substitute teaching license. So how do you apply? You must apply to Cincinnati Public Schools. If you only apply to the state for licensure, we can't see you. So please make sure that you are applying for at Cincinnati Public Schools and that you are also applying for Ohio licensure. You can see there that our pay rate is $134 per day. We are also paid $160 a day if you would be selected as a teacher sub. Please note that we are also paid. So on our next slide, we want our substitutes to be successful. As a result, we are providing paid orientation for newly hired substitutes on the days below. New employees will attend one of those sessions, and topics will include how to access our substitute management system so that folks can go in and pick up assignments, classroom management, and our CPS core values. So thank you again to all of those who have applied. We are so excited about those who will be joining us and those who are still continuing to apply. You can see the numbers on the screen in terms of those applications that we have received. In terms of our substitute teachers, we received 48 applications in the last 30 days. 35 are going actively through onboarding. We are going to move those next 13 that remain in that box to onboarding next week. You can still see that we need about 150 paras, 12 security folks, and 26 dining positions. So we, again, are excited about meeting you if you are interested in joining our CPS family. So part of our staffing shortages is obviously because of the COVID virus. So what are we doing to mitigate against that? One of the strategies that we use are our vaccination clinics, and I'm so excited to report that since December 10th, here in our district, we have vaccinated 1,017 people. So roughly in a month, we've vaccinated 1,000 people. Those include our students, our families, and our staff. We have been very committed to holding approximately 2 clinics a month. We wish we could do more, but we recognize that our partners have a lot on their plates as well. So we are very, very grateful to Children's Hospital and to the Cincinnati Health Department for their commitment to the work. We had a clinic last week. At that clinic, we had 284 people, I believe. We also know that there are vaccination clinics around the city, and so there's one being held today, I believe, in Lackland. Our Cincinnati Health Department has vaccination clinics each and every day. And our Children's Hospital, I just heard this morning that they are sponsoring clinics every Wednesday from 4:30 to 6. And we'll make sure we get this updated. At all of these sites, you need to register on their website. It's also important to know in the vaccination world, and this did impact us, that on the 27th, the CDC changed the definition of fully vaccinated in their guidance to mean that you had to have a booster to be fully vaccinated. We met with our teams on the 3rd and the 4th to implement that guidance, and it significantly impacted some of our folks who were asymptomatic positives. On the 9th, however, because in the world of COVID, things rapidly change, so on January 9th, CDC returned back to essentially what was the previous definition of fully vaccinated. saying that fully vaccinated now did not include the booster, although it is strongly, strongly encouraged. And that now, instead of waiting 6 months to get your booster, you only have to wait 5 for Moderna and Pfizer, and 2 months for Moderna. On the next slide, additional mitigation efforts include creating testing sites for all of our staff where they can participate if they are symptomatic. Those sites are at Aiken, AWL, Data, West High, and Riverview East. They've been highly attended. We also, for our students, have one of the only testing programs in the entire region where our students can get tested each and every day if needed at our schools. If we look at another mitigation strategy, it's around our surveillance testing. So last spring, we were contacted by the governor's office and asked if we would be willing to be a pilot for this program. We said yes. And so it's a voluntary program for our elementary students. At the time, they were not eligible for the vaccination. And each and every week, we test asymptomatic students. And it's sponsored by Thermo Fisher and Color. Thermo Fisher is a national corporation, but they have local ties to Cincinnati. So you can see that we do this program each and every week in 47 buildings at all of our preschools and the Promise Center. We test approximately 1,000 students each and every week. If parents wish to participate in this program, given the rise in community spread, we continue to offer this program to eligible students. All you have to do is let your front office know. So we also know that some of our teachers are in environments where students may not be able to consistently mask. Thermo Fisher has said that they would be happy to have our teachers in those environments be able to participate in that weekly testing, whether they have symptoms or not, just to make sure that they are not COVID positive. And we will also have our medical assistants through the health department go on a weekly basis to our high schools. So that will begin on the 31st of January. Finally, we recognize that COVID is difficult for all of our employees. So as such, our employees are able to advance sick leave for a one-time 5-day advancement. CFT by their CBA has a 15-day advance of sick leave. So please note that all sick leave must be paid back before normal accruals resume. And so we are thankful that we are able to support our employees in that way. And now we will hear from Ms. Murphy, Assistant Superintendent Murphy, who will speak to us about parents and partnerships.
Thank you, Susan. Good day, everybody. I'd like to talk to you for a moment about our call for parent support. We are certainly, as you know, everyone knows, in need of our parents and our partners to support us, whether you are a caregiver or you're a member of our lead agency or you are a partner in our building. We are asking you to do one of two things, either contact your school directly, or you'll hear a little bit later as we move on how to do that through the district-wide efforts. So on the next slide, you will see a reminder about the need for a background check, and then the next couple of slides will help you to understand how to get that background check and how to secure your volunteer badge. On the next slide, you'll see the steps are listed there. This is a reminder to everyone about completing the registration form, about submitting to your background check, and the badge authorization that's necessary, and to recall that there are appointments that need to be made in order to secure that badge. And then we will contact the school, and the school will then reach out to that person who is volunteering. So more specifically on the next slide, you'll see how to submit and obtain your local background checks. You can simply come here to the Education Center, and we can help you at no cost to you secure that background check. And there are certain things that you need to have in place in order to do that. You can also go to the Hamilton County Juvenile Justice Center to receive a background check. After you have that background check completed, again, you'll come here to the Education Center, and we will work with you to secure your badge to be able to get into our schools. On the next slide, there's a little bit more detail about registering online to get that badge. There is a telephone number that you may call in order to receive that information. And again, The security office hours are listed there below. On the next slide, we get into talking a little bit more about parent communication, and you will see a series of dates listed to support our parents being able to work with their school, or if their immediate school has X number of volunteers, how to be able to help in some of our other schools, which some of our PTO, PTA organizations are already starting to do. The last thing is the partner volunteer orientation will be held on January the 18th, and there are 2 times listed there, an afternoon time and then an earlier evening time. On the next slide, you'll see additional opportunities where our team will have office hours. Parents may have questions or seek clarification about something before they actually commit, and we're happy to provide multiple office hours during the day and in the early evening. There is a parent voice talk show that's done monthly. We do have parent groups. We do have our pulse checks, as well as working with Cohere. And on the second Tuesday of each month, we'll be meeting with our PTO, PTA presidents to talk about, or chairpersons, to talk about, share ideas or talk about best practices. On the next slide, I do want to specifically say thank you to the Cincinnati Recreation Commission. They do have their doors open in multiple sites for our families during the school day who may benefit from that support. You will recall last school year, or the majority of the school year, they did the same thing. So there is a cost, but they also work with the Ohio Department of Jobs and Family Services. Also, we have support on the next page from the YMCA. And so Krista's team has worked to get the flyer up about what CRC is offering and what the Y is offering. They do have 3 locations open for our school-age children during the day. On the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about partner communication, and you'll see the dates that we meet with them. And please know we meet with our lead agencies on a monthly basis. We just met this past Tuesday, so we'll meet again in a month. And then we have our resource coordinator meetings, and then new resource coordinators often have more detailed questions, and we have an opportunity for them to also share their questions, best practices, and ideas. And then finally, there are some additional partner opportunities listed on this slide, and I also want to share with the board members that you have at your table our family partnership plan that you can take a look at whenever you have a little bit of time, but this is based on our current board policy, and then we pull from the standards from the National PTA. At this time, I'll pass it to Connie Solano.
So just to let you know what we've been doing and continue to do while our students are remote. All of our facility staff have been trained on the COVID cleaning protocols, and that continues to be discussed with the team to make sure that they know exactly what they're supposed to be doing. We are currently using an electrostatic disinfecting unit, and that unit just sits in the classroom and fogs the classroom and kills whatever viruses that are in there. So all classrooms will have that done prior to returning to in-person lessons. We're maintaining daily cleaning logs so that we can track exactly what building, what rooms within those buildings, what spaces within those buildings, exactly what was done, what was restocked, and whether or not the electrostatic unit was used. We also make sure that the cleaning kits are well stocked, and the custodian crew knows to make sure that every day they're checked to make sure all the materials are in those kits. And as I mentioned before, all the spaces will be disinfected before the kids return back to. Next slide, please. Currently, our HVAC system uses a really high quality MERV filter. We cannot replace them with a HEPA filter because that would violate what the manufacturer's directions indicate. So, but we are replacing them throughout the day as we are aware of COVID cases in the buildings. So because we can't put different numbers in there and we have special circumstances, our special needs units and also our preschoolers, we are requesting today actually for permission to purchase under emergency these air purifiers. They are called Vollara Air and Surface Pro. They're highly recommended. They do have HEPA filtration system built in along with proprietary design that has shown to be very effective in killing viruses, including ones that are COVID related. We're looking to put them in 296 classrooms, which is all of the preschools and all of the special units. And this is in collaboration with our early childhood team and our Department of Student Services as well. N95 masks, we will be offering them on a voluntary basis to preschool teachers and teachers in the autism and multiple disability classrooms. I know that it came up about giving kids N95, but they're not designed for children. They're designed for adults. And so we're going to continue to make sure that kids have disposable masks that are both NIOSH and or FDA approved. Next slide, please.
Thank you. And we would just close, next slide please, by saying thank you. We have 4 more remote learning days before we return on January 24th. We are accelerating hiring and adding more subs, additional parent and partner outreach and support, and reinforcing our safety protocols. So thank you, and we are available for any questions.
Thank you very much, Interim Superintendent and team. Before we, I think in a second we should do just questions and reactions from board members, but I wanted to say not only thank you for your hard work this week, but thank you for doing this the very first thing this morning. I think it was important to all of us that we come back to the community with an update on here's what we said we were going to do, here's what we're doing, here's where we're headed, and make sure everybody has a chance to ask any questions they have about it. So with that in mind, what questions or reactions to board members? Vice President Jones.
Yes, thank you for the report. I found it very comprehensive. Lots of things going on. I really appreciate that. I'm curious right now as to your assessment of how the remote learning, kids, are we reaching the kids, connecting, and how's that?
Yes, actually the attendance, student attendance have gone up, staff attendance have gone up. Our technology hotline, when I met with Jeremy on the first day, it was 100 calls. So parents are accessing the hotline. There are some areas of improvement. As we get that information, we are responsive and improving. But it's not a lot of that. I think we've learned a lot in the past year and a half, and we're ready to go with remote. So I think overall, pretty good.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Dr. Mouse.
Questions. And I see you on the email, so I know that you're already getting them. But our students with IEPs, is there any idea how we're dealing with those students with remote learning?
Yes.
Yes, so our Student Services Department, our managers have been contacting several of our families, particularly students with really complex disabilities, and we are able to offer some additional support for them when they return to school to really address some of the specially designed instruction that may need to be done.
And what I can do, so as I get the emails, I send them to Infante, and I do get a response back of how they followed up with those individuals. I can forward those emails to the board so you're aware that we have responded.
Okay. My other questions are, I'm concerned, does every school have a PTO? I'm really concerned about the parent days at least. And how many do, how many don't? And if the schools, is there a plan for the schools that don't have a PTO to increase their engagement, especially during this time?
Ms. Murphy, can I ask that question?
Yes, not all of our schools have a formal PTO, but they all have someone in our Community Learning Center office who connects with the school, the principal, the resource coordinator, or the principal's designee to make sure that there's opportunity for parent voice. And we do have a goal, it is in our strategic plan, to increase the number of PTOs. I think formally we're at 48. I can also share with you the names of those schools, who those PTO presidents, chairs are, if you like.
My other two questions are regarding, the air purifiers. First one, do they stay in the rooms, or are they gonna be like a permanent fixture, they just come on and off, or?
They are designed to, they stay in a room, and they're designed to run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And they last anywhere from 2 to 3 years.
Oh.
So, and we, am I allowed to speak?
Yes, please.
So we just contacted our, there is one superintendent of East Aurora School District in Illinois, purchased a bunch of these. And she said she highly recommends it. She said she believes it's keeping her students and staff healthier. She said, she's had some COVID cases, but nowhere near what the surrounding school districts have had. So they've been highly represented. It comes highly recommended. And as I mentioned, these do have people focus. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Moffitt. Ms. Weinberg.
Just a couple questions for you in terms of cleaning up the classrooms. You said that specialized classrooms will be getting the filters. What about your modular classrooms that don't have filters? How will they be able to have access to filter resources?
So modular.
Those are the trailer.
The trailers.
So I believe, let's look into that. I think there's only 2 trailers, I believe, but I will research that. I think Hyde Park is the only school with trailers.
Thank you.
Because we got rid of those, but we can definitely purchase it for the trailers at Hyde Park.
All right, other questions from board members or comments? Ms. Bolton?
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate this. I really appreciate Dr. Moffitt's questions about the IEP and also the PTO. Both are so critically important. I know we had great difficulty, as did everybody around the country, providing appropriate remote for our kids in IEP. So thanks, really appreciate that question. I just have 2 questions really that's left over from last year's finance committee. Since my colleagues on that committee are no longer on the board, I feel like it possess some kind of history. It might be wrong. I know that we looked into some air purifiers a couple of 18 months ago or so, and some of them worked, tested well, and some of them didn't. You're confident in the testing of these that are the Volaro Air?
I am. They've been independently tested, one by University of Texas Medical Branch, and that the ActivePure technology within that Volaro system inactivates 99.9% of airborne SARS-CoV-2 viruses within. And if there was
We'll have the opportunity to test them. And
absolutely. Our environmental health and safety person actually went into a school. We have a demo unit. Now, mind you, it wasn't either there were no kids in there, so it's based on whatever the air quality was there. And it was only for 3 hours. It hadn't been on for 24 hours or a few days. And just within those 3 hours, it's promising. He says it can't be conclusive, but he did notice a shift downward in VOC, volatile organic compound. So what we're planning on doing is doing those same air quality tests for those units that are going to be purchased, hopefully, and then in the classroom and compare those. That they will have both the Volaro and also our normal HVAC filtration system inverter. So they have the HEPA and the burner, and compare that to just the classrooms that have the inverter filters in it, to see if we're seeing like a significant increase in air quality.
And you said the N95s are just for grown-ups.
They're just for grown-ups, yes. They're not designed for students. And also the reason why we're doing it voluntary is because you do have to be fit to use them. I mean, they are pretty stringent on breathing, and so people have to understand that if you're going to use this, you asthma or any other medical condition, you have to think twice about it because it is considered a respirator.
I think we all think these are needed. I think it's great that we would purchase them. Just want to make sure that they're right, because I know we've gone through a lot of different iterations as to what's the best. I do want the public to know, though, that we have spent a significant amount of money on air quality in virtually all of our buildings, in the millions, and retrofitting and also new equipment. And the other piece is that at our little preschool classes for the little people, I know that they've been doing air purifying almost on a daily basis, but this will allow this to happen in a more efficient way.
Yeah, because it's a unit that just sits in the classroom and it stays on all 24 hours a day. You know, so it's visible. They can see that there's this piece of equipment there, and it's not very noisy. It just continues on for 2-3 years.
I just wanted to assure the public that this isn't because we didn't have something, this is an upgrade, or this is a moving forward kind of thing, so thank you.
Thanks, well, Mr. Morosky.
Appreciate the questions, appreciate the administration on the update. It's always great, and especially Ms. Bunty, the news report about the vaccinations. It's remarkable that many people are showing up, and I know there was a ton of people at Rockdale.
Yes.
The last one.
Yes.
Right? Like a ton.
Yes, wrapped around the school. So, but our partners have committed to giving every.
I was there, they had a time wait.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it wasn't because they ran out of time, it was because they didn't have time, they weren't gonna get out.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So in that same vein, and I should probably know this as policy chair the past 3 years, and I think I do know it, but I just need to ask it. So the piece about the call for volunteers and subs, I think is fantastic, and I think we're gonna get a good response. I remain a little wary with the state of Ohio's police requirements, but I'm not willing to die on that hill, so that's fine. Our policy states vaccinations, all district employees and co-located partners, and those partners include health partners, resource coordinators, school resource officers, and other partners working out of a district facility or working on behalf of CPS in another location. Does that count subs, volunteers?
Subs, yes. So if you substitute in our district, you have to have up-to-date vaccinations.
Wonderful. Not volunteers.
That's, yes. So if, that's the way that we have been looking at the vaccine mandate, is that if you are a co-located partner, then yes, you participate in our vaccine mandate. Substitutes, again, yes, but parent volunteers.
So we have Ms. Davis here, and of course we're meeting next week. Can we get the vaccine policy on the policy agenda here? And I'm not saying, I think I'm agnostic right now, but I'd love to talk about it if the other kids up for that. I think we might have more volunteers than substitute. Barrier of entry is much lower, right? Cool, thank you.
Anybody else before I share my reactions? Great. So first, thank you very much, the administration, for being here on Saturday morning, for sharing this update with the public. I think I have a couple of questions. So for interim superintendent Mott, I think a lot of families are out there wondering, okay, I hear everybody saying that there's this commitment to coming back on the 24th, but will it actually happen? And like, what if the staffing trends aren't any better? You know, what if the direction of the curve changes? Can you just help explain to everybody, like, what is the worst case scenario? And then just, I think, making that really clear, that we'd love to hear.
Yeah, first I would like to start with the positive to say we are really confident in the 24th. One of the biggest reasons, and Ms. Bunty shared that, is really the change in the CDC, right? A lot of our teachers were out because of quarantine, and their definition was to be boosted. Our teachers, a lot of our teachers didn't have the booster. They changed that. So we believe we will have staff, more staff in the building, certified staff in the building, and not having to quarantine at that rate. We are doing everything possible to improve hiring. So with all of that said, the worst case scenario in my opinion is to go back to our metric, which is 85%, and then hitting those classrooms, right? From, if you recall the process map that we had to make decisions. 85% was the trigger, then we looked to cover classrooms within the school, then from central office to see what gaps are there, and then go building to building to building. But because of all of the health mitigations we put in place, the safety protocol, the active recruiting on staffing, I don't think our system would be hit as hard as it was a few weeks back.
So if I what I hear you saying is, like, it's been really clear we have these choices between a school-by-school approach and a temporary district-wide virtual center. The worst thing that happens on the 24th is we go back to a school-by-school approach.
Right.
There may still be schools where people are out. I mean, my wife had a positive for COVID this week, even though we're all boosted. I had a negative test. I mean, that there's, it's out there.
Right.
There might be places where it's still bad, but it'll be a school-by-school approach starting on.
Right. Our system was so compromised the last 2 weeks that we had to go to remote. But all of the things that we have put in place, I don't think we have to return district-wide remote.
I thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Others of mine are really quick. I wanted to, for Krista and for Tiana, I wish we had 3,000 people watching this morning. We have 30. So for everybody who didn't hear what the interim superintendent just said, we have some way of trying to get that out as clearly as possible so that as many people.
Yes, we can work on that. I think Tuesday will get people's attention a little bit better, if that's okay, and we can start to clearly send that message next school week.
Sounds great. If anybody was worried about how to find those websites that were on the slides about volunteering or find something, I just tried to Google Cincinnati Public Schools sub or Cincinnati Public Schools volunteer. It comes right up. It's very easy to find. I've received some concerns from parents about not being invited to take the parent survey. Who they contact if they want to make sure that, so Ms. Murphy, great. And so for anybody listening, Shauna Murphy, Public Schools, person to contact for any possible. Any last call for board members?
Just to follow up on your very good summary, the board will also be meeting on the 19th. So that would be an opportunity for, again, for us to know something and maybe the status from the administration, because I know one of the other things I want to know, they might have at least some lead time to try to figure out things.
Right.
So congratulations, I think it's great to move in this direction.
But I think the 19th is an executive session. I think what I hear you saying, Ms. Bolden, is we should communicate ahead of the 24th.
Yes.
What the expectation for parents should be on the 24th, and I think that's something that should be very well.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just wasn't clear if Ms. Bolton was saying an announcement, some sort of formal announcement on the 19th at a board meeting. So.
It will be an opportunity for the board to be briefed and then something from the administration. Yes, most of the announcements now will be coming from the administration. For instance, so it's, yeah, your point, you're right.
I just wanted to say, and I don't know if I said it enough last meeting, but or the business meeting, but I think it's really important that we have a lot of this great information that you have brought to the table. I really want to thank you all for doing that, because I think one of the struggles in past situations is we didn't have enough information about what was going on that was available to the public to hear, to know, to learn, to grow from, and then to absorb. And so, even though I know not everybody has loved the fact that we had to go to remote, I think the sentiment from several folks really is very different about staffing concerns, right? That they recognize this, they see it going on in other school districts now. We were a little bit ahead of the game, so we don't have the same issues. The fact that we have masking policies, things like that have mitigated a lot of the risk our schools already, and as these things are steps to kind of reset our staffing woes, is really huge. I just want to show some appreciation to all of the folks in the attendance office and all of those who have been working to communicate out the message, or who've been doing the hard work of making sure that as we come back on the 24th, that we are prepared, that we are ready to go. And I think it can be underscored how important it is that we saw that information and we have that information as we go forward. I think that's the best way we talk about getting more people involved and giving people that trust that we are working on their best, working with the best interest involved. I think that's how we do it, is we provide that information. So I want to thank you all for all the hard work.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Thank you, everybody. Because of a packed day, I think I'm going to keep us moving. I do want to see if we have a motion to accept the treasurer's report. For a second? Okay.
48-hour waiver first.
So for new board members, because this is a change to the agenda, we have to motion to have a waiver of our usual process, which is to have stuff out there 48 hours in advance. I say we've done this probably 7 or 8 times since I joined the board, and I had to ask what it was the first time we did it. But is somebody willing to motion for a 48-hour?
I will move to enter a 48-hour motion to the treasurer's report. I'm still asleep, sorry.
Okay. Is there any discussion about the motion to change the agenda? Okay, we get a roll call and motion for the waiver.
Bolton?
Aye.
Frank?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones, sorry.
Yes.
Dr. Moffitt?
Yes.
Mr. Morosky?
Yes.
Mrs. Weinberg?
Yes.
President Lindy?
Yes. Great, so now can we have a motion to accept the treasurer's report?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion about we're purchasing today, the air filters and the KN95 masks?
One comment. There's 3 funding sources for the air purifiers. The one that's coming from early childhood, I think it's the ET grant. I wasn't able to confirm it, but if I'm not correct, then we'll correct it in the next board meeting. Just want to let you know we were able to reach there this morning.
Great, and I see that a lot of it's coming from ESSER funds. Any other discussion? Okay, we roll call vote, please.
Bolton?
Aye.
Craig?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Moffitt?
Yes.
Mr. Morosky?
Yes.
Mrs. Weinberg?
Yes.
President Lindy?
Yes. Wonderful. So thank you, everybody, from community administration. I think we're going to transition here to our next part of the day, which is on board development. So enjoy your weekend. Go Bengals. Happy birthday, Dan. And hope everybody has a great So, board members, let's take maybe 1 minute. If you want to grab a snack or something, and then we'll.
How are
Yeah.
you
Oh, okay, that's okay. That's okay. I know, I was missing them myself too.
I'm not a
We have an executive session that starts right at 10, which is in 43 minutes. And I want to see if we can do some meaningful board development work between now and then. Ask each other to explain things and push on ideas, you can get to the heart of the real issues, which leads to much better commitment to whatever decision the group comes to. And when you get that kind of commitment, you can hold each other accountable for sticking with that commitment and actually pay attention to whether you get it. So that's one way I want to try for us to think about working together. We'll try it on. We'll keep the parts that work, parts that don't work will change. But it all starts with this idea of investing in relationships. So I really want to thank Mary for having an idea for how we could do some of that today. I asked everybody, who has some ideas for what we could do in the retreat, and I really appreciate her sharing her idea. And so if you want to take a second and explain kind of the prompts that you inspired.
Sure. So for today, I decided it would have been a lot more items, but since we are kind of constrained with our time, we were supposed to bring 2 objects that basically describe you or something that's important in your life, whether it was from childhood, whether it was from college, your first job, something from the present or something for the future. And I figured that would be something good for us to kind of get to know each other a little bit better and kind of see where our mindsets are, where our mindsets are going. And so, yeah, that's why I suggested that small activity. So hopefully we can get some insight on each of that's here today.
So, and here's kind of how, as Mary and I take this around, I also shared 2 prompts. One was a time you were at your best. So what's a moment in your career or life when you've just been really proud and happy and feel like the kind of person you want to be? I like those stories because I think it helps people see what their strengths are. And I think as we know each other's strengths, I think that's a nice way to get to know each other and build trust, and we can leverage those together. The other prompt I had is why did you want to be on school? I think knowing people's why is also a really powerful way to build trust and get to know each other a little bit. So my proposal is going to be we give everybody about 3.5 minutes, not a lot of time, to do whatever of those feel most meaningful. You choose. You could spend the whole time talking about 2 objects. You could spend your whole time talking about why you want to be a school board member. You pick. But 3.5 minutes, whatever in there you feel like you really have energy to talk about. And then we would have 1 minute for the rest of the board to share their reaction to what you said. Because I think when people speak, it's really nice to be heard. And gives you a chance. So that would be about 4.5 minutes per person. I think we can get through all of that. And then get up to kind of 5 minutes. This is going to feel a little bit faster than I think it works. Well, let me ask too. Like, if it feels dumb, I don't think. I don't want to rush it. Okay. We'll try. We live in a world that is not perfect. And I wish we had 2 hours just to do this. Not the world we live in, so I think we should make the best of it. But I do give time people. I don't like it not to be done.
Oh, Mary, you do it because you're the director.
Great. And so then maybe I think, could you, Mary, give people
Excuse me, I should have done that.
30-second warning or something?
Yes, so they have 3.5 minutes.
3.5 minutes, give them a warning in 30 seconds. And then we'll have 1 minute to share. Questions about the prompt or how it's anybody want to go first?
I can go first.
Mary.
Yes.
Kareem, yeah, thank you for that, Mary. All right. Awesome.
Do I get to stay in?
Whatever you use, whatever you want to do.
Teacher and-
Whatever you want.
So, obviously, I brought more than. What did I just do? All right, I'm gonna start off with a photo. I'm gonna allow you guys to see the photo. Everybody see?
No, really.
Yes. I'm there. I'm closer. All right, so this is a photo of a very important person that was in my life. This is the individual who adopted me and took me in as her own child. And this was the year of 1999. It was on her birthday. I actually lost her in 2014. And this is important to me because she made me into the person that I am today. She made me into the strong fighter. She made me into the person who believes in herself. She made me into the leader. And I really cherish this picture because at this time, I was a sophomore in college, kind of struggling with believing in myself, wasn't very confident, and I know that she kept instilling positive words and just, things that mom would do. And this picture and the memories kind of allowed me to become the mother that I am today. It allowed me to become the woman that I am today, the friend that I am today, the sister that I am today. And when I look back at this picture, I think about all the things or all the ways that I've grown. So I cherish this a lot. So that's that picture. Something else that I cherish is I have this thing and it says I'm strong. And I cherish this because I had to realize that I am strong. I'm a strong individual because of the things that I've gone through. Being a ward of the state in the state of New York when I was younger, not being able to be raised by my real mother, that was a huge thing for me, and it actually affected me in so many ways. And so to be able to now stand here before you guys as not only an Olympic gold medalist, not only as a board member, not only as an author, not only as a speaker, not only as a mom, but so many things. And I have to realize and remember. So I share this with my daughters, I share it with my family, I share it with my husband, and I really share it with everybody that I meet. So that's one thing that you guys will know about me, is that I'm resilient. I'm strong. So thank you. 1 minute, 20 seconds. Woo! Yeah. Somebody else can take that on the
Anything on time you were at your best, or how you wanted to be a school board member, or?
So obviously throughout the campaign trail, I expressed why I wanted to run the school board. It's just to really be a voice for students and to kind of use my teacher background to really speak up and be an advocate for kids and families, and of course the staff as well. So that was one of my really big reasons for being on the school board, and really just wanting to make some changes. And I think the time that I've been at my very best, obviously, is winning an Olympic gold. That was the best time of my life, and it showed me that I could do anything. And so if you put anything in front of me, it's going to get done. So thank you. Oh, God.
It's up to you, like your time. You can waive it, or we can go on.
I'm going to waive it because I'm pretty sure there might be someone that might.
Okay. So then we have a minute for people to share any reactions or questions before. Let's go. Yeah.
I learned more about you just now than probably the entire past year. Seriously, like I didn't know your story about the board of the state. I didn't know about this woman, and I know a lot of other stuff about you. I know what you care about. I've listened to you for about a year already, and I'm happy to work with you. But so for whatever it's worth, I'm glad we did this exercise already because I already feel like I know you better.
Well, thank you, and I'll tell you more about this.
Yeah, for sure. All right.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. It's hard sometimes for people who are adopted to share that kind of information. So it does take a lot of strength to do that. And I don't know if you remember when we first met. Do you remember?
Maybe.
Good answer.
We actually first met when I did the presentation for the Pat Reedy.
We actually met before that, but.
Oh, wow.
Right.
I mean, even just, I remember what I remember about you at that time were the questions that you asked, which were real. I'm assuming you were a teacher.
I was.
But it's just real focused, so I could see how it aligns with where you are today in terms of being on the school board. So, yeah, it's just, yeah, it's a good fit for you as well.
Thank you. And really quick, so we actually met when I received an award for CPS, got inducted into the Hall of Fame, and walked up to you at the table.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, I do
Yeah.
remember that. Yeah.
Thank you, that was a minute.
Okay, that was it.
Okay.
I think it's important that our young people know your story. Someone that looks like you could be me, you know what I mean, for them. I think that is super important. So thank you. I've heard a little bit about your story before, but every time I hear it, it gives me hope that young girls can hear that and see that too. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, who would like to go?
Okay. So, yes, we're standing. It's very
You do you, whatever you want.
So, I have, interestingly enough, the two things that are important to me. Start with the breast cancer mask, because I am a third generation breast cancer survivor. My mother and my grandmother passed away. My mother is living. My grandmother passed away from breast cancer. And I had breast cancer at 33, with 2 young boys, divorced, and one of the hardest struggles in my life. And I'm survived, and I'm here. And so that's super important to me because I've been able to go back and give to other young women who are diagnosed early some hope and some inspiration, and that they can find it and that they can actually grab it and help share some questions. The other thing that's important to me is UC for a number of different reasons, but when I got my PhD, that was one of the hardest struggles ever. I think it's like mental eating, and it takes you right to the end. And you really kind of want to give up. You've done all this work, and you've been challenged, and you have to push through. So for me, that was one of the points in my life after having breast cancer that I realized fear is really alive. You can push through, and you can actually achieve that goal, set a goal and achieve it. And so after having breast cancer and feeling like I wasn't enough, feeling like I'd done something and that I wasn't in control of, actually pushing through, that was my very, very, very first conquer. So from there, I'm like, shoot, you can do a lot, you can do anything. So those are 2 really big times in my life. My mom is super important. We're both breast cancer survivors, and she's super important for me. So mom having breast cancer and then getting a PhD. Those 2 things. I know I saved some time.
You did, so you have 1 minute and 25 seconds.
Anything on why you want to be?
I want to be a school member because I think that everybody has skills and talents that are useful. And I wanted to, again, show young people that look like me, whose kids look like mine, that you can actually do it. I want to pour into and support some of the good stuff that's going on in our district, get it out. And so I wanted to be able to use my connections and to be able to impact on a broader level. Because we have greatness here. I want to be able to tell every little person, you are great, you are awesome, not just the ones that get that recognition online.
Thank you, great.
37 seconds.
All right. Do we have 1 minute for reaction to the question?
Sorry. Just wanted to thank you for sharing that. I know sometimes it's hard sharing something personal, and I think that your story definitely will hit so many people. And I love the energy that you bring, especially just saying that you want everyone to hear and you want everyone to know about the great things that are going on. Yes, and they should know, and that's the goal. And I thank you for being here, and I look forward to working.
I was thinking, Kareem, like I tend to think of myself as someone who is high on resilience and perseverance. I've never had to do anything like survive cancer while going through divorce. Yeah, truly. I think that is a different. How God I am you are. Other than that,
I would say a similar thing. I've known you for a long, long time, and I did not know that about you. And I just want to say that shared that. I'm excited with you. It also helps explain. I've always appreciated, even when we were on that other board together back in the day, that I appreciate your candor and how direct you are. I appreciate it a great deal. And we just saw what we saw today already. I'm sure we'll see you again later. So thank you.
Just real quick, I knew her mother. I went to school with her mother. I went to school with everybody's mother, you know. And, but the first thing I met you when you ran before, I think I said to you, "Dang, you look just like your mother." And that's what I remember. But I do appreciate that, hearing your personal story, which I didn't know. And again, like Mary, it takes a lot of strength to be able to share that with people who are comfortable with it. So
Go to the next.
okay. This won't come as any surprise. But first, this picture was taken on Easter of 21, and it includes my grands and my great-grands, with the exception of one who had his 11th birthday yesterday. He didn't make this. He missed his ride, so he didn't get to come to the family gathering. The reason why it's significant is, you know, during COVID, the only sort of social life we had was to be with family. So this was one of those occasions where I was able to get everybody together. But one is a CPS graduate, my oldest. The two babies go to Cannes. The two here, my great-grands, they go to Mount Washington. My daughter, she's not in the picture, but she's a teacher. And so that's one investment for me, is my family. Those of you who know me know what this is about, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Y'all know. This is very important to me. I started playing, I was a girl in my neighborhood, the only girl in my neighborhood who wanted to play ball with boys. They didn't let me. So I found a girls team to play with. Learn how to play fast, learn how to play slow pitch. I came up in the slow pitch era, played USSSA travel competitive ball. So we traveled all over the country. Then, when my daughter became ready to play, I became certified fast pitch coach, and I coached. This probably was a period of my life that was the most rewarding, because as a coach and a mentor, you really get to know the girls in a different way. And I used to tell the young ladies when I was coaching them, I don't care if you win. I want you to have fun. And the girls that I coached were the girls who came from poverty, who didn't have money to buy gloves and cleats, so I bought plenty of cleats and gloves and things like that. I coached 6 years at Taft for a population of young women who were not even didn't have the opportunity to be exposed to what a good game this was. But the life lessons that came from this is what made me lean toward wanting to do more on behalf of kids. The life lessons that they learned. One of the kids that I coach is an assistant principal in this district. One of the girls that I taught pitching to, dynamic pitching, is the daughter of one of our leadership teams. One of the girls that I coach is a social worker in one of our schools. And quite a few of them have kids that go to the school and do other things. They work in the district, and I see them all the time, and they still call me Coach Steve. How you doing, Coach Steve? So I wanted to be a school board member because I feel like this was my calling. This is what I was meant to do. And I don't do it like everybody else, but this is what validates me, is what I was able to give to them.
5 seconds.
Right. So for Coach C, who has some reaction.
That explains partly, Ms. Jones, why you have to accuse yourself so often from Treasurer Report.
Oh, yeah.
That's all, yeah.
You were wondering about that? Like,
I knew the family.
What do you work on this? So she recuses herself. Yeah, yes, she knows it personally. So that, and to thank you, I don't need to say more than that. Past number of years, I appreciate you. So.
And I'll just add, wow, I didn't know that. So it's interesting what you can learn about the individuals that you will end up working with. And I look forward to it. Well, thank you for sharing that.
thank you.
I just want to know if you have the softball league.
I know.
You haven't seen me play. No.
Sharing this softball right now. Those days are over.
You can be our coach.
I always say.
My daughter's an even better coach than me. She coaches varsity for North College High School. Been trying to get her to talk to Josh for it.
Yeah.
So.
I always say, don't judge my book by the chapter you walked in on. And it is so applicable, because I never would have thought that. I never would have thought you were a music teacher.
Oh, yeah.
So I think our elders, I don't want to say older people, but our elders have wisdom, look to you all as a resource. And I'm looking forward to learning. So, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
You don't have to come.
I promise I had to be with you. Yeah.
Look at this.
All right. So thanks for the exercise, Mary. So I have a couple things. And so one is very unsurprising. My guitar pick. People know I love music. I don't know if people know I've been studying music since I was 6. Started with piano, played in jazz bands, hip hop bands, hippie bands, bluegrass bands. I had an offer to actually be a touring musician, but I took teaching instead. Got a job to go to New York City. My first gig was on Late Night with Conan O'Brien. And I would have played bass in a touring sort of like hippie jam bluegrass band that still tours. I turned it down because I wanted to teach. So music is important to me, but it's deeply, deeply important to me, and it quite literally keeps me sane. And so I brought my guitar pick instead of my whole guitar. I brought this fire truck, which covers so many bases. I kind of cheated. So instead of bringing like 5 things, I brought one that's like 1,000 things. So I brought this. Number one, the main reason, because it symbolizes Katie and James. James loves beep beeps. This is a beep beep. And he really likes this beep beep. And Katie, the reason it reminds me of Katie, a couple of reasons. Katie, he always wants to play with Mom. He always says, Mommy, play. It's probably the sweetest thing he says. And Mommy can't play, he gets very upset. He very rarely says Daddy play, but if he does, and I don't play with him, he doesn't particularly care. So he's got a real bad for Mom, which he should, and I do too. But it's also significant because he's named after his grandfather, who was and he is attracted to fire trucks. We run around the city. He's always looking at fire trucks, and I can't wait until he's old enough to tell him that his grandfather, James, longer living, was a Cincinnati fireman. But the reason I say this kind of has a couple meanings is that also sort of dovetails into my why of why I wanted to be on the public school board. And it's really a result of my family. My family comes from Poland. We haven't been in the country since I was born here, of course. But my relatives who are still over there, many of them fought with Lech Walesa and the Solidarity movement. I had relatives in the camps before that, part of the resistance movement against the Nazis. This is a long way of saying my father was in labor for 50 years working with the Teamsters. I was raised to not take any shit, and I was raised to not take anything from bullies. I chose education. I came throughout my career to see this country as a country that is governed by, in some ways, systems that bully and abuse children, quite frankly. And education, I started seeing more and more in my community work is like the best way, in my opinion, to try to dismantle some of that systemic bullying. And what better way to do that than to learn more about policy and to get here. And so it's a real honor to be with y'all. It really, really is. Winning re-election, one of the times I felt the best, but I will end with that question. I feel my best every single morning. I run with my son, James. Started running on April 5th last year when I weighed 265 pounds. That was 100 pounds ago. I run 13.1 miles every day now. Before that, I never walked. Longer story there, but do my best every morning. Do my Sunday. And it's all down.
And then the day really.
Didn't know either of them.
Somebody, honestly.
Speaks my language.
Feel like James gonna love the fire museum.
Look, 2 blocks away too. Yeah.
I think I'm happy that you shared, and it's always amazing that I learn different things. I've learned an enormous amount of your music background and love of watching you over this past few years. But then the running piece, I used to run, and I know that can be internally rewarding to get up and do that every day. But there's a piece that comes to that, and I have seen you transition into that piece over the past year. So I didn't know you before. I didn't know you were 262 pounds, but you just have a different calmness about you and so I'm happy to know you. Very excited to continue to work with you. And so thanks for sharing. I'm very big on names too, because I purposefully named my kids, and I think that we shape them when we name them. And so that personality, James' personality, he's a sweet guy. He's my favorite in the Morawski household.
Yeah, mine too.
And so, I think that's super powerful. So, we're gonna learn stuff.
For me, you're the only one in my life as a retired person that texts me at 7:15.
I got lots of time.
But I know you're up and stuff. But there are some things that at some point, I think you and I probably should go to Christian and talk. And you impress me for lots of reasons. And you also frustrate me for some reasons. But I have to honestly say, if you're going to be honest, that I have learned a tremendous lot from you. And so for me, you have helped me grow. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. I think we have just a decision point to make because it's 9:45, and I know that Pam and Ryan and Melanie are also going to want to get into those meetings and get set up and everything. I want to do right by the next part of the day. I also want people to get a chance to go. So, I mean, my thought, one thing we could do is we could try to have a shorter break between this and the next one. Could work. Or we could have one person go and then have the last two people go in the afternoon. It will tighten up a little bit the afternoon, but I think we can pull off. I have a light preference for the second. Does anybody really want them all in now?
That's fine. Yeah. I just think it's important that everybody.
Yeah, I agree. And I like the idea of two in the afternoon rather than just the one.
Yeah.
So we'll have one more person. Is that Mary?
I think that would be good. One more person goes.
Then people can use the restroom and coffee.
I'll be happy to do it.
All right, Ms. Bolton, and then
Yes.
right now I'll bring it home.
I appreciate the opportunity to do this. I have two things. One is a picture of the back row of the theater of Wyoming High School. And we'll pass it around. The reason is that that's sort of something that is hopefully a tribute to my students and I and staff and the community of Wyoming. And that while I was at Wyoming for 36 years, there was not an auditorium. And we built it, and with great tax dollars and lots of parents and good people, but it's there too where I could think a lot in that chair in the last row. And the kids and I and the families chose the colors that were even in the auditorium, and indeed it ended up the stage was larger than the big one downtown. So I'm very proud of that, but mostly I'm proud of just the relationship with kids, which has been so fulfilling and continues on Facebook very often. But because the arts mean so much to me, particularly theater arts, because if you're dealing with young people especially, and where their souls are, or where their hearts are, or where their minds are, it's a very delicate but empowering opportunity for them to discover themselves. So I brought this is on my desk to sort of lay in there. And then the other thing, just in case any of you don't know, this is a soot container that I bought yesterday. And I live on the house I grew up in, and it's surrounded by acres of woods in the center of the universe, which is Talbot-Chill, which Carolyn will testify. And in those woods, they've proven that Underground Railroad path. It's a green belt that was supposed to be for traction line that the city fathers never actually built between Grosbeck and all the way down to Spring Lawn and the north side. So unkept promises, but that unkept promise has fallen to all of us that live near those woods, is to protect and preserve those woods. And now Children's Hospital is a neighbor protecting those woods. But I wake up every day, and the first thing I am thinking about is I got to go feed the birds, whether it's winter, spring, or summer, or take care of my 16 turkeys that are now in my yard, let alone the deer, and of course my 2 German shepherds. But this is take care of nature and preserve it and value it, and where I'm the happiest is in the woods or in theater. So that's just something to be talking about. You don't need to say that. But I joined the ran for the school board because the CPS was failing. It was 2007. It was a completely dysfunctional board as far as I was concerned. Completely dysfunctional relationship between the superintendent and the board. Ms. Blackwell, every night that, even after I got elected, every night she'd walk in and do like this to me. I was president that first year because it was so dysfunctional. We weren't going to pass a levy without Chris Nelson and I think, sitting in the center seats. But she would do this, like those other 4 people had 4 votes for me to go. They were going to like fire her on any evening in public. It was outrageous. So that was my major reason. Plus, I'm a very, very proud graduate of CPS. The other piece is I try to get up every day and try to do something of which I'm particularly proud and humble for doing. And that's just how I face it. I get that from my mom and dad. And names, I am named for my mother because she almost died when she had to.
The 1 minute for questions or reactions.
Just keep it proud to start off. Thank you for sharing. You know, it's nice learning more about individuals, and I look forward to learning even more about you. I'm so excited that you shared about your experience in being at Wyoming. I know some former students, they talk about that. Great research.
Yeah. And I'll just say, this is very similar to what I said to Carolyn. I don't mean any disrespect. I look to you all as elders, respectfully. And I just think when you're sitting on the other side of the table, not as a board member, it looks different. But when you're in the seat, for me, I start to realize that the wisdom that you all bring is such an honor. And I look forward to carrying that with my excitement and my talent and then growing more. So thank you so much for sharing. I learned a little bit more about you. I look to you all like I look to my mom sometimes. And like, why are they thinking this way? But there's a reason. But, same generation. But it just gives, it's good to know that people are walking, talking history books. So you can make those connections, whereas you couldn't see that past you all with it.
Real quick, and we'll keep going. But Phyllis, I got a text. Is there any possibility you could her? Yeah, Pam and Ryan and Melanie are likely out there.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Thank you.
You go, Joe.
Okay, yeah, I'll keep it. A concept of know and love, it's a love-hate relationship. I don't want to say hate. It's not that. But the one I just respect your wealth of knowledge. You are very bright, very smart. And I can't keep up with you in that very much. But I think, again, just like I said to Mike, I've learned a lot from you. And I think that I really have gotten to know you in a way that lets me know where your heart is. And, and that has sort of calmed my inner struggles sometimes about Lord, is that I really do know that your heart is in the right place when it comes and that you really care about what you do.
I was just gonna say, I don't think anyone expected you and me to be buddies.
That's right.
Or especially you and me.
Yeah. Totally.
I can see it.
And that, well, I can see it happened fairly quick. But it's quick that we actually taken it. Like when you're in class.
I need 10 seconds.
10 seconds, I will. Like when you're in class, you're like, you two can't sit next to each other. We were actually told, and now we're on the same committee again. But I worked.
Hopefully it wasn't me that told you that.
Well, it was the whole board.
We will continue.
Most of the knowledge.
I have, we can't break yet. I have things I was going to say to you, but I'll save it for the afternoon. So we gotta keep going. We need a motion to recess into executive session to consider employment of a public official.
So moved.
Motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussion?
We're going to 112.
Okay, Ms. Bolton,
Aye.
Ms. Craig,
Yes, right.
Ms. Jones,
Yes.
Dr. Moffitt,
Yes.
Rosky,
Yes.
Ms. Weinberg,
Yes.
Ms. Linda, yes. Great, board is now in executive session. So we can kick off the ready to go? Okay, so we are now back out of executive session. Thanks everybody who's still with us, both of you. We're going to finish the board development work we were doing before the executive session. I think we heard from 5 of us. I think there's Brandon and then we left. Maybe we okay if we go with you next, Brandon. Mary's still going to be our housekeeper, and
I am.
we'll hear from Mr. Gray.
All right. One of my items I did not bring because I just didn't like hearing it, so I will talk about it. But the other item I brought were my shoes that I wear to dance tango. I teach Argentine tango. For those who were at the kickoff of my campaign, we did an Argentine tango performance. Those went on my website. But it's been something I've been doing for 6.5 years now. So I teach over in Northside, I really love doing it. And part of me is about also communicating Archie tango with other stuff. So like I dance Archie tango with everything from like a hip hop song to Christmas songs to country songs, whatever. Because I just think it's fun. Like you hear music and you hear a beat, you find it, it's just a fun thing to do. But it's not the easiest of dances to do, and it's also not the greatest of dances during a pandemic to bring people into because it's a very intimate, close dance. That is one of my items. The other item I just didn't bring is my old trombone. I started playing trombone in the 4th grade because a friend of mine who walked us back home from school played trombone. I thought it was cool. I didn't have really long arms then, so it was very hard. But music is a big part of my daily thing, and I might talk a lot about, kind of being serenity. I love music. Music of all kinds, types, and I think for me, playing trombone and getting a chance to do marching band for as long as I did do marching band and getting a chance to do a bunch of other stuff with music, and just always being around music and learning and love music is big for me. And also, my family seems to think of me as having a very old soul. I just growing up with Grandpa, I love old music, so anything Motown, like that's my heart. That's where I'm at. most positive, where I'm at my most high moments or positive moments is dancing. I enjoy it. I love you find somebody you can connect with. Communicate. I always describe tango as a conversation. So maintain a conversation. You talk together. You work together to finish the dance. That's kind of how I think of life should be. Is together to find a way. That's my tidbits.
Okay, you did pretty well on that. You have 56 seconds. Do you have anything else to add, or?
No.
All right. Add something to that? I would love it if you could lead us.
I'd love to learn.
We should definitely do it.
Love to learn.
I actually think you should just get up here and demonstrate.
Show us. You got 50 seconds. You got
the music in your head.
On another day, I will definitely do something. Or some type of performance.
Your kickoff was cool. There were people. Just go.
So, love getting to know you. The campaign trail now. I love your spirit, man. I already knew your fun facts about dancing. Cool. But my proposal would be on the nicer floor, we have a wonderful stage now. See, I propose that when we do hire the next permanent superintendent, that we inaugurate each year day by having you do a tango with them on our next week.
Oh, no, yeah, if they're able to do it.
Well, they might have to learn.
I actually did a tango one time, and I did one for the men's course.
Oh, cool.
They do a show, and so we did it for a couple songs.
You sound like you know what you're doing. I'm
these few days, like, been partners, both at the big table and in here and everywhere we're going, and now I've really enjoyed getting to know. I knew these lovely women here. I knew them. God knows I knew Michael, but I really, this was the mystery man.
Yeah.
That's for sure. I've enjoyed it. And now I kind of understand a little bit more why. That music in your soul.
I also really like having an actual lawyer in the group as opposed to a pretend lawyer. I just think your mind focuses on very clear issues. I think I've noticed that and appreciate that.
I was going to add, actually, you said what I was going to say. I said, you, to me, I mean, I'm happy to get to know you as well. And I think the more I get to know you, I really understand and appreciate that you're a thinker. And I can see your mind going before you speak. And so it's like you're processing all this and it comes out. But, you know, that's how you process things. And it's very evident that you think a lot about what you're about to say and all of that. So, and happy to have you here. And happy that, well, I hope people don't take this personally, that we have a very diverse group, which includes a Black male, which is hard to get Black males to. We've been fortunate to have Black men, but in this group, this is probably as diverse as it's been since I've been here, and I think that to have you here is really a strength for us.
It's going to be a great board.
Actually have grown to know you over the past few months of campaigning with you, walking around neighborhoods with you. And I gave this example, and then I thought about it. I said, Brandon is with myself, Brandon, and Mary. It's like Brandon's the little brother. He's got like the oldest sister who's very outspoken, the middle sister who's outspoken. We're both bossy, and he's just kind of like, okay. But when he speaks, and when you do speak, when we give you an opportunity to then, you know, it's so calming, it's so refreshing, and it's kind of like, oh, okay, great. What? So I kind of look at us like the Three Musketeers, and that we have really a very unique perspective, each of us. But I like the fact that he's kind of, and he always calls me back. He's like, well, Doc, you know what? This is what I think. And I'm like, right. So I really like our partnership, the fact that we mesh. And I appreciate your voice. It's not very loud, but it's definitely, you have a word to it, and I appreciate that. And so sometimes I'll look to you like, if you're from a legal standpoint, can I ask this question? And you're just like, not really. It's just very calming demeanor, which is very good. And I think also it's very good for our students and our black young men in the district that you don't have to always be very loud and boisterous. And you can be into something that is very passionate to you, like dance, and find that passion, enjoy that, and be a school person, and be a school board member. And, all those things I think are wonderful. So I'm really looking forward to our time together and hearing you. I will give you space to have your voice be a little louder. Thank you.
So we'll go last. We'll go. All right. So this took some work. Finally, I was up late last night finding stuff.
Oh my goodness.
But I'm better.
Our president.
I appreciate it. Okay, so I'm going to share two that go together, and then I'm going to share another. So this is the nameplate that was on the door when I was teacher, Mr. Lundy, history hero. My principal made this for me. I didn't develop myself, the history hero. And this is something with students and I made. Well, I'll explain what this is in a second. But so I taught 7th grade social studies. This is for my 3rd year of teaching, which was, I think, the most important and most powerful for me. And our goal for the year was that as 7th graders, they were going to learn how to write one of these document-based questions that are on the AP exam. But before they did it, they had to earn it. And the way they were going to earn it was by showing that they'd mastered 80% of the standards for 7th grade year and 100% of these DDQ skills, I call them. We had this poster on the back of the wall, so over the course of the year, as kids earned the ability to do this, advanced document-based question for AP classes, they would walk back to the back of the classroom and sign their name on the poster on the wall. And so all year we were working on this. And the topic they wrote about was actually immigration. In U.S. history, and we took them on the field trip at the end of the year in New York City to the Statue of Liberty. And I couldn't find this picture, but we have a picture of them holding up the essays they wrote about our country's complicated history with immigration on Ellis Island, which is also where my family came from. So it's just a very, very connected to this group of kids. And I think some things I learned, particularly that 3rd year of teaching, was to believe in the unlimited power and potential of kids and adults when they are good people together. That is such an easy thing to say, and man, is it a hard thing to really understand. When you understand it, at least for me, it becomes something that is almost physical in your body. And when I think some of the things I came to believe and see about what kids can do when we as adults show up the way we're supposed to show up, they're the kinds of things I can never unsee in the rest of my life. And it's what motivated me in every other part of my career since then. Our principal had this quote from Frederick Douglass that was on the wall in the school, which was, where there is no struggle, there is no progress. And those are words that feel like they're part of my DNA at this point. If you ever see me sign off in mail, struggle in progress, I used to do this with all of our teachers and Teach for America. It's because I believe that's how the world works. Like the things that really move us forward are really hard, and they don't move in a straight line. Some days feel more like struggle days, some days feel more like progress days. But those are things that are important to me. I also chose these because this was the year I met my wife. We actually met in my classroom when I was a 3rd year teacher. She was also a teacher, and we lots of stories about how I didn't quite have the confidence to go and talk to her, so I would like to find the person she was standing next to and go talk to that person all night long and just kind of drifted around the room. But it worked out, and that 3rd year was a very important year. How long time, Mary?
You have 11 seconds.
Some other time, I will tell you about being Jewish. Very important to me. This is our Kiddush cup, and I will tell you it came from my rabbi. It was from my wedding. We use it with my family at Shabbat every Friday. And being Jewish and raising a Jewish family is also extremely important to me, and I look forward to sharing it with you as we get to know each other.
Great.
So that's
Thank you for sharing that. I definitely look forward to learning more about Jewish or the tradition itself. I know I've shared with you before about with my mom who adopted me, the only way she was able to stay in the States is because she nannied for a Jewish family who then allowed her to get her allowed to share to stay in the States. So I'm forever and always grateful. Love to hear more about your family.
Well, I was choose up there, and I want to last. So, it has just always amazed me at how you are like Brandon. You have a very calm spirit. Kind of like the guy that sat down, was very quiet, but has been when you spoke, you have a lot. And more recently, I have appreciated that you're asking for and including my voice and diverse voices in a process that could just be normalized. So I appreciate that. I appreciate your leadership and your including me and others at the table. That to me is super important because I believe that, I live that, and you're just an example of that. Thank you. And I'm learning more about, I took some Judaic studies classes, but I'd like to learn more in a safe space so I can ask more questions. So that is, thank you.
I've really enjoyed the last 6 months that we've had on the search. I think it was a kind of weird blending that Carolyn in part did and we in part did by raising our hands too many times. But I really enjoyed it. And search will be as positive in the end as it has been for these 6 months.
I've known you for quite a while now. I feel like in my whole tenure as president, we always found time to go down to Coffee Emporium and have coffee. And I've always felt very good about our interaction with each other and questions and all of that. And I think just since you've been on the board, I mean, I always make it a point to try to learn from people because I learn different things. There are things that I certainly am not good at that I think you bring to this board that I have appreciated, and that is your attention to the detail of what needs to happen, and I think that that's needed. But on a personal note, I think I feel like we have worked really, really well together over these past several weeks, and I feel like that I can call on you and share anything with you. So there's a level of trust there, and I look forward to your leadership, and feel very strongly that we're headed in the right direction as a district with you at the moment. And again, anything I can do to help. Let me know. Yeah.
Okay, last comment.
Last comment. I don't think anybody is unique to me. I don't have many acquaintances or friends who are able to call one another out to make each other better. I don't think many people do, honestly. You've been one of those people well before you were even on the board. I know we've sat down in coffee shops before. You might see something I posted, unsurprisingly. That was like, yeah, you sure about that? We go, come on, man. But anyway, I like to think that you and me, we think quite differently. We joked, I think, at the first superintendent search, like, I bet this. And there's two totally different, and we've never gotten mad at each other, which is, I think, unique. And that's what I wanted to say. And like Carolyn said, your attention to detail, like, I see the forest debilitating me well, which is strengthening a weakness of mine. Sometimes I can see how everything connects, and I have a hard time seeing the trees. You see the veins on the leaves. Yeah. and that is helpful for me. We helped to share that. I just wanted to say that out loud.
And thanks again, I think, both to Mary for suggesting the activity, and I think to everybody for bringing some things in. Really, everybody did it. I learned a lot. And I think this, and my hope is this is both fun and helpful. Like, and then the helpful part again is when people know each other well enough to say, I actually don't understand that, can you say that again? Or, I know you're coming from a good place and I really like you. I also totally disagree with what you just said. Here's why. I think it just helps us have much better conversation about what's the right thing for us to do. And then if we have those kinds of conversations when we commit to something, I think it's so much easier to hold ourselves and each other accountable for doing it and getting some kind of outcome in the world that we want to see. So it's both fun, but also I think really, really important. And I hope it's an okay bridge to the next thing we're gonna do. Really hard to figure out this thing.
Can I just say that before we move to that?
Yeah.
Just to go back and pick up the 5 characteristics regarding this
Yeah.
organization.
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that with us and having an opportunity to do it before the meeting. But maybe this is Pollyannish, but if you look at the way we're supposed to be behaving,
Yeah.
even within our protocol or the bylaws, especially about our communication with one another, those tenets, those principles of that essay or book actually are very much embedded in the way we're supposed to be behaving with one another and how our organization is supposed to work.
Yeah, I think it's right.
But I think I thought it was very helpful to me.
I'm glad.
But I just want to add there, I think this is kind of cute. He gave me the whole book. He gave me the whole book.
Yeah.
So I'm like, now I don't know how to take that.
No, I only
understand.
I will learn this, and I just use them over and over. But I do think it's a good bridge to where we're going to go next. I think the importance of all that trust is to commit to some things, and then make sure that they make a difference in the world for children, at least in our context. And I think also for our teachers and for our families and for our staff, for kids. And so what I hope we can do in the next 35 minutes, I think we can actually do it in 20 minutes, try to get out of here in a little bit, is decide as a board for the next 6 weeks, what are the most important handful of things that we absolutely have to win on as a board? I'm choosing the time period 6 weeks on purpose. It's a little unusual. I think people are used to thinking about goals for a quarter or a year or something. The beautiful thing about 6 weeks is it's so close that we cannot ignore it. But it's not too close. In 6 weeks, you could actually do something. I also think there's so much change happening in CPS right now with the superintendent search, with the board election, with COVID. Putting a line in the sand about we are going to get some wins on the board, and they're going to be right-sized. So 6 weeks time period. There are a lot of things we can't do. But I think as we start to show ourselves and the administration and the public that we're going to commit to some things, we're going to get some things done, and then we're going to look downfield and set the next set of things. I think that creates a virtuous cycle that will be really helpful for us. And so I really also want to thank you who shared ideas with me. So this was part of the email I sent out last week. I know if I missed some people, please tell me. But I know I heard some things from Mike, and I heard some things from Eve, and I heard some things from Kareem on specific things that should be on that must-win list. It's also okay if you didn't have it. But what I have prepared to show you here, and we're going to show it with Rob's help in a second, is please see this as in pencil. But I took a swing at here are what our next 6 week must-wins could be. And what I'm going to do, I have a hard copy here. We can put it up, Rob, when you're ready.
I gave excuses, but I gave you something but I don't necessarily think it's something we could prioritize.
It's actually part of you and Kareem said something very similar.
Okay.
And thank you for reminding me, Carolyn, but it's about board and community engagement. And so if you take these, and they're up on the different screens, and folks at home can see them too. And the reason it's in a Word document is so we can edit it. Like half hour from now. What's it? We got one Word document. They're not printed out. Sorry about that, team. That's my fault.
You have an email of it.
Rob, will you forward it to people? Rob will send you a digital copy too if you want it on your computer.
Okay.
And so what I was going to ask is, if you look at it, and I'm going to make this as big as I can.
And can I just add, I didn't send anything, but I do know that I mentioned to you some things, one of them, but is that a trend?
It's very okay. I've clearly missed some things for some people, so we'll make this right. I think the really important thing here is that the group think these are the right things and that they be clear. So the way I wanted to start this conversation was,
I know, for example, Eve felt pretty strongly that the superintendent search be. Can you say just a minute about why?
Single most important decision we make.
Anything else you want to add up?
I think we're determining the next 5, maybe 10 years with this decision.
And it sounded when we talked like the idea of announcing a set of 3 finalists by early February, that would fit 10, somewhat arbitrarily on there, was the kind of thing that's like, that's super clear. We can actually do that. It'll be a big deal. I think I know Mike and Eve both felt strongly that there'd be something about COVID. Do you want to say a little bit about why you thought that was important? And
I mean, sort of in the esoteric sense, I'll do both. Maybe esoteric and then where I start, as I said earlier. And then a little more ground level. But I think in the esoteric sense, again, this issue has dictated decision making everywhere for the past couple of years. I don't care what profession you're in. In some respects, the auspices of COVID is part of yours. For me, professionally, in this role politically, it has been 100% of and so that's probably part of the reason it's always on my mind, but structurally, then more on the ground level. Contrary to popular belief, as discerned by the box, I want kids in school. And we have to figure this out and get this right so that we can keep kids in school. And if they have to go remote, because I'm not willing to put that off the table and just say it'll never happen again, because we have no idea. We have to be able to have some kind of remote option. Hopefully it never happens. That we can plug into that is robust. I'm not saying we haven't done a better job, but on the more pragmatic level, in case we have to do that, hopefully we never do. After the 24th, we're ready for it. But again, I just think, like Eve, I share the same beliefs as Eve regarding having the kids in school. I just obviously hear on one other side.
And I would only add about the COVID, it's the biggest disruptor to our progress and our presence, present than I can imagine. And until that disruptor is somehow tamed, and we don't, and until we learn what we need to learn from it, because it taught us a lot of good lessons, we won't be able to move on. So we have to cope with it.
Yes, ma'am, please.
And just because this is one of my concerns too, I think that we know that COVID is not going away out of our fingers. I think really setting something in place so that we're not coming back to the same place each and every year. We know next year, January, it probably will be high numbers. I don't want to speak it into existence, but let's already be prepared. Let's already have that plan that we've used before. We may have to alter it, but let's have that plan in place for the next 4 years or beyond.
Yeah.
Well, I also wanted to add, I think that kind of, because COVID is super important to me, there's a resistance from the community on some levels. I've had to deal with that with my own kids, I hate to say it, but there's a very big resistance to health and safety personally that we're seeing come into our schools and impact our learning. But I think that part of it is that we along with, I feel, the community of some sort, is trying to go back to what we had instead of looking at making it different. It's going to look different, it has to look different, and then what does that difference look like? And let's stop trying to talk about the past and look at a different future, because it has to be different. And I one of the things that just it makes me cringe is when people say, okay, well, this happened last time. This is a new variant, so we need new, maybe different options, or we need to think of it differently. Some of the choices may be similar, but we can make different decisions within those choices. And so that's what I've said in the community. Stop talking to us like we're 2 years ago, a year ago.
Yeah.
And so I think that we need to, with respect to COVID, we have had the invitation from the city and the county, we did, and we need to look at what does remote look like for our kids. Does it have to be where it is all or nothing? Does it have to be where it is the schools are closed and then it's remote? Like, I just think we need to accept the fact that and think proactively that remote can look differently other than what we've had it historically.
I think that's really important. Let's give one last 1 minute comment from Carol, and then I'm gonna keep moving this.
I agree with what's been said up to this point, and I am one of those people and I remember the board meeting 2 weeks ago, when I was one of those people who was saying, we've been there. And it was in a cynical manner, because I don't believe that we have to be stuck in a certain place. And I said this, in our interview, there was a question, she asked us, the last interview, she asked us a question about, board diversity. She asked a specific question. My response was, the district needs to be in a place where we truly follow the strategic priority of reimagining what we look like. So my cynicism in board meetings is not that I'm stuck there. My cynicism is, okay, I don't want to spend an hour or 2 hours in a board meeting rehashing all the stuff that we used to do, when we could be spending 2 hours in the board meeting reimagining where we want to be in that way. So I agree that there's going to be more planning needed involved with that. And if there are challenges or issues we need to deal with, such as what is going to be sort of a permanent remote plan, let's get along with that. Because we can't rehash stuff.
Yeah.
And nor do I want to.
In 20 minutes, the picture is, I think we will have voted on a set of 3 to 5 of these and adopted. That's ambitious, but I think we can do it. What I want to do is share a couple that I put on here, note the communications piece so that people have a chance to talk about it. And then I'm going to ask everybody to answer the same question in a second, just so we can kind of hear where we are. I think I want to go down to the ones I added, and I'll come back to communications. 4 and 5 were mine. We have 3 of 7 people who are new. These are priorities not for a year or for next year, but for 6 weeks. And just in these next 6 weeks, I think it's incredibly important that all of our new folks feel like they have ways that are working to get questions. Truly, like if we can have everybody feel like they have what they need to be successful from jump, I think we set everybody off to be a better. And then the last one is that on board development, we identify some form of ongoing board governance training that the majority of us really believes is going to be. Part of that is because we are some of you folks. Part of that is because, at least since I've been on the board, we haven't had any kind of governance. I'm saying this descriptively, not evaluative. We've had a lot going on, but we haven't invested yet in something we all do together. I think to get clear on how we can do the best board that we can be for our next superintendent. So then I want to appreciate, I think, both Kareem and Carolyn, who had some ideas on communications. Do you two want to say a little bit about, I think you brought this up for different reasons, but do you want to say a little bit about what felt important to you here?
Well, I think that I brought it up because I felt like we should do a state of the board address. That the superintendent does a state of the district address. But I think that we could do something like that where we identify things and then we want to work on it and present that to the community. I also feel like communication, having experienced it, I think that the community will give us grace, but they have to know that we're doing things different, or we have to even acknowledge that we've got some deficits. So I just think communication with the community is paramount. Even if we have to pivot and shift and say, hey, you know what, we tried this, it didn't work. But I just think we need to really significantly increase our communication with the community, with our teachers, with our support staff. And I'm really wanting to hear more student voices at our board meetings. I'd like to have a student section where the hearing of the public includes students dedicated and have a few minutes to be able to say what they want to say. I'm just big on communication.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm going back to sometime, I don't remember exactly the time frame when we talked about board development in one of our work sessions. And there was an assignment made at that time which Ryan took on, and that was to develop strategies for board community engagement and communication.
And I do have that document of recommendations that were made that we never, because of COVID, we never really got a chance to address. I think everything that we're talking about, even what Kareem says, is worthy of a conversation, which is part of our development. I also think that as a board, we have somewhat of a unique role in terms of communication and engagement. We each have our own constituent base, but we have to have a united message, in my opinion. And so developing that united message on and communicating it in a strategic manner, which is planned, scheduled out, and we are responsible to report out to our community. To me, that could be the state of affairs kind of message. And, and I'm interested in hearing more about the message that Kareem was talking about. But I really think, and I certainly don't want to get into, we have to take care of everything, because I think we have to hold our leadership accountable for a lot of that. But I do think it's very important for us to put on a united front, irregardless of the fact that we're 7 independently elected people, and that we have a similar constituent base, community councils, community groups, things like that, that maybe in a planned way we could reach out on a fairly consistent basis, quarterly or whatever. And so the document that I have gives some ideas about that, and I'm happy to share that whenever it's appropriate to do that.
Yeah, so this is great. I think it's very, the last one before I kind of move us to do like a share from everybody. Mary, was there anything else that when we talked that I did not include here? You want to make sure it gets reflected in this first?
No, I don't think we're fine for now. Whenever there's an idea for more things, so
Okay. So then I think that there's 3 of these that are fairly straightforward and not super, that there isn't a ton of spread across the group. And then 2 that are going to be a little more tricky. I could be wrong. But to test this theory, I want us to go around and start with Kareem and go this way. Which is just to think for a moment about items 1, 4, and 5. So this is the superintendent search, announcing a set of 3 finalists by Feb 10. New board members, all board members feel like they have ways of getting the most important questions answered that are working for them. In board development, we identify some form of ongoing board governance training the majority of board members feel would be really helpful. That we win on those 3 things by 6 weeks from now, that's basically the end of it. This is not a vote. I'm just trying to get a sense of where the room is and see if I'm misreading people. And so what I wanted to hear from everybody is just on those 3. You like what's up here? You really hate what's up here? You have like a proposal for some tweak to what's up here, but just in like a sentence or 2, where are you on those 3? Then we'll see where we are to go. Question?
Is it possible, can we combine 4 and 5 and make 1, 2, 4/5?
Can you say that one more time, Mary?
Is it possible if we can change what you said, concentrating on 1, 4, and 5, correct?
I was thinking search.
The search, which
New
is
board.
search at 1.
Yep. 4 new board members.
4.
And then 5 board development.
So my suggestion is it possible to do, number 1, the superintendent search, 2, COVID, but then to combine new board members and the board development as 1? Or is that too much?
I think we'll know as we go around, because it might be that some people love 4 and hate 5, or love both, or like 5 and hate 4. So, can you start something?
Yeah, I like those. I actually like them. I think it gives, if you separate them out, I can see where Mary's going with respect to adding 4 and 5 together, but I kind of think 4 and 5 is relative, having them separate is good.
Okay. And Carol, just on 1, 4, and 5?
I'm okay.
Okay. Eve, on 1, 4, and 5?
Well, I'm going to be contrary. We're failing at 2 and 3 right now. So why are we bypassing where we're failing?
Well, I'm not saying we skip them. I was trying to.
Well, you just did.
I'm trying to knock them off early, so we can spend most of our time on things.
Okay. Well, I feel better than that because, there's years ago, there used to be something called working on the work. it's like the board development of the stuff, somehow doing the work it causes development as well. But
I wouldn't be super-
I'll go with your 1, 4, and 5.
Super fair, I'm not saying we stopped talking about two.
Okay, that's not.
No, I think what you're saying is that that's an ongoing.
That's a
process.
given.
It's not the first, we're not gonna resolve these.
Or I just was seeing if in 2 minutes can we knock it off to spend 15 on two and
Yeah.
That's cool.
I think that's a little like the not work.
No,
You
no,
actually
yep.
agree.
Okay, it's a good sign when even I agree.
I wasn't contrary at all.
5,
And then we'll, yep.
But 4 and 5 are great. I only have one question, and I've heard a lot of the rest. Are we like, is there some sacred number about 3 finalists? Maybe 2 or 3.
So no more than 3. So 3 or fewer.
Okay, not to get all some, but like, we keep saying 3, and I thought I might have missed something. Had to have 3.
I think the 3 was just about,
Cool.
if it's hard to build a consensus.
On square.
Hey, Rob, my keyboard's not connecting. Oh,
Good.
yeah, it is. It is. It just took a second because I'm impatient. Okay.
And I didn't respond about 4 and 5, I'm sorry. I'm very into the 4 and not yet totally into the 5 until we get our superintendent in place and we don't step on whoever that is.
Mm-hmm. Mary?
And now that you further clarified, I would go with the 1, 4, and 5.
Yeah. So I think we have a majority on 1, 4, and 5. I don't want to hear your point, Eve. And I think wherever we are on 5, I think we're holding to push go on it until we're making sure that whoever the new superintendent is, that this is an additive force, not something that will be a loss.
Whoever that new superintendent is gonna help us figure out what kind of board we want to be.
That's right.
So,
Yeah.
let's not get too,
That's right.
let's not create a board for some other superintendent.
So because we did that, we now have the last 15 minutes just to talk about the 2 hard ones. And so I think on COVID, I noted here in this draft that there is likely some disagreement. I wrote up here like a straw person to react to. That our COVID commitment, this is just for the next 6 weeks, would be that schools are open for in-person learning on 1/24, and we continue a school-by-school approach to any future virtual needs. I might make that time down, if it's like this, or this year. I think I want to be really clear. What is really important to me is not necessarily this specific content. What's really important to me is that there be specific content that a majority of us are committed to. So I think we can change any of this until we get a version where it's really clear that there's at least 4, hopefully 7, who are committed to making that happen by 6 weeks. So does anybody want to say something either in favor or of against? Let's stand up here, we can play with it.
I'm in favor of that statement. Schools being open for in-person learning or and continuing with school-by-school approach. For future virtual.
I love your point too, Mary, about, I think it would have been, for next year. Like, what's the winter like next year? And I think that's also important.
Because we know the dates, we have in mind, and when we go on break, we can kind of look at the data from the past 2 years. And yes, I know things are different and something else might come out, but at least we have that. So then we can say, we're prepared and we're not spurring around. We're not going back into data again.
Anybody want to co-sign that or disagree?
I'm not co-signing or disagreeing. For me, I agree with the statement. I'm a little unclear about where you changed, you say, to any future virtual needs. I don't know what that means.
So let's say, for example, on February 15th, we have another, or like March 1st, there's another wave of stuff. And it gets bad again. We have staffing concerns again. I think that any future virtual needs means that when that wave comes, we're doing school by school virtual moves as opposed to a district-wide virtual.
Okay, I'm there. And where I wasn't at is, will we be opening up additional conversations or discussions about different ways to do virtual, hybrid, or, like we were before? That, I needed clarification on exactly what that meant.
I think that question isn't addressed with like what we're going to try to do in 6 weeks.
Okay.
And for me, I'm not saying everybody else has to agree. That's okay. I think it might take us longer to figure out an answer.
I just wanted to be clear what that was, so I'm clear.
I really, I can be supportive of this, and I'm also tired of the binary kind of thing that it's this or it's that.
Yeah.
That's freaking me out. I don't know anything in life, it's that or this. So, one of the things I think was Kareem had mentioned something about the different way of doing virtual or something, if I recall. The real answer is that we have to figure out a different way to do in person. Because when you really think about the fact, we had 85% attendance, and we couldn't run the district. And that's no fault of anybody's, except we're still using the same old way we teach school as they did when I was going in the 1950s and 60s. You have to figure out another way.
Reimagine,
to your point. I was just going to get a quote from our interview. I really think it's both of those. You have to reimagine virtual, and you have to reimagine the in-person. And that's going to serve us.
Let me just follow up with one second. Does that make you want to change anything about this, keeping in mind that this is just between now and the end of it?
Well, I think we're going to be talking about reimagining. So yeah, I add in virtual and in person. It's not like we're going to put it in place, and very frankly, it's not our job to put it in place. It's not, you know what I'm saying?
What's your proposal? You want to add what?
I wanted to add in person up there.
Virtual or in person? Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Virtual.
That's really the new school, and that's the new norm.
And that's what I was gonna add. Be great minds think like. And I was trying to ask that question at the board meeting. And forgive me, I was just, I saw 2,200 people watching it, and I got a little mesmerized. Like, oh my God, this is making me nervous. So my question wasn't coming through clearly, but I was wanting to get the administration to think outside the box.
Thank you.
On what it means if a family does not want to switch to CBA, but they want to go to Pleasant Ridge Montessori. What does that look like? And the norm superintendent might say, well, we had that last year, and I'm not talking about last year. I'm talking about, even if it's a one-way stream, what is it that we need to do so that the in-person looks different if the option is not to be? So that I'm calling it a remote, but maybe that's not the right word. Maybe that's hybrid. I think to your point of looking at what in-person looks like, we know that a remote option benefited some students. So there is benefit to that. So what happens to a student that needs to watch it for health reasons, but they don't want to leave their school, they don't want to leave that community? So we need to be, I think we are an educational institution for the most part, and we need to be creative with exploring varying ways to accommodate learning styles. And I just don't think that I think we can do that within 6 weeks because we need to. We can at least explore that because we have to. This is a 2-week window. Cleveland has already shown us that, we're 2 weeks behind them. There could be something else coming down the pipeline this academic year. So I just want us to at least look at that. And I like adding in-person numbers.
I was just gonna say, I think for what we have right now, and our role as a board, I think that follows in line with what our role is, and maybe just also adding the idea of working with the district's leadership, working with the superintendent's office to do those things, because I think that's maybe the only thing I would add into that idea. Because in some ways, a lot of what we're asking for is stuff that they're going to have to learn, and not something we can go and figure out in 6 weeks. To be planned, but to begin that discussion, right? Begin that charge to the district to reimagine what it is the virtual, what it is the in-person. So I think it works. I think the only thing I would maybe add on to it is just that this is something that's being done as a partnership with the superintendent and the district. To really define our roles, because I don't know that we want to necessarily commit ourselves to saying we're going to figure out that solution 6 weeks by ourselves. Like, that is not something we do.
I think just to play back what we've got, because I want to save a little second here for communication and I think if we don't get to it, then we're not there. But what people who, so schools are open for in-person learning on 1/24. And in partnership with the administration, we continue a school-by-school approach to any future and in-person meetings. I think what that opens up, because of Eve's comment and Kareem's comment, is there may be more creative school-by-school approaches to try than we've tried in the past. We should encourage the administration to explore this. What it rules out, and I think this is important, is it rules out a blanket-wide district approach. But it really says we want to go in as creative and school-by-school and differentiated fashion. And I do think that has meaningful content. Is there anybody who, just to save a second for communication, is there anybody who disagrees with that?
I don't disagree with you, but I do think we need to get to a point. I'm not saying people aren't individually. I just don't think we're all collecting, which is fine. You don't have to. Where I've gotten in my brain, and I know I've said this when we were in the last board, so I'll say it with the new folks around, and I know this is a self-preservation tactic. I have rid my brain entirely of a scenario where I will ever not be wearing a mask. I'll ever. Again, it's a self-preservation technique because the constant, we're gonna, and this is why I get so passionate. I think oftentimes we have this conversation, it's always like this big surprise, like, oh, we're talking about this. This is, I've had to accept this is never going away. And if it does, then I'll be super happy and we'll have a big celebration. So I get a little uncomfortable when we say we're never going to do it. We have no clue. I dig this, I'm into it. I just, if I have to be a Debbie Downer and say, we may end up closing every school by school until the whole district is closing it, is my point.
Yeah.
So, and if that's the way we're going to do it, that's the way we're going to do it. We give ourselves these little glimmers. It's like, and Mary's right, and I like that Mary added the piece about we may get another crisis before next quarter. It may not even happen again. But I just, I think we just need to accept this how it is. One last thing and I'll shut up. What I like so much about this, I think of a school like Roseland Conduit. I brought up a couple times past point, to your point, Kareem, about this having to look different. A school like Roseland Conduit, if it's in person with COVID existing, will never be able to look. So there are very specialized schools that are going to have to just look different, period. And that's, I think, a good example of one of them. Teachers have to physically touch students to educate them.
So with our last 3 minutes, I do not think we will successfully hammer out all the details on communication we need. And I really believe in respecting people's time and all this to do. My proposal will be to do two things. We ask Kareem and Carolyn together to come with a proposal on what a 6-week win could look like on communication. We put it in board matters in the upcoming meeting, and we have that discussion then. And then we spend just 1 minute to do a closing as a group before we. Is that an okay way to proceed? Anybody want to be in that group? Who is it? You or Mary or Mary? So let's have the three: Mary and Kareem and Carolyn together.
Evie, you coming?
I'll do what everybody wants me to do.
You can't have four. So let's do the three, and then you come with a suggestion. We'll kick it around during board matters.
I have a question. Mike, does it make you feel better if we say in future virtual in-person meets this year, but then add the caveat and only use closers as a super last resort? Does it make you feel better if we have that in there? Just trying to be respectful.
No, I really appreciate you asking that. No, I think I'm good with that, Doc. I think I'm good with that, honestly. Because again, we may end up closing every school until they're all closed. It's also, I'm going to say.
So for closing, I want to try something we've never done before. And then if people want to stick around and have individual conversations, it would be cool. But I was going to ask everybody to share one of 3 different words that start with A. This is particularly from Mike Morosky because I know he loves this. So you can either share an aha, which is something you learned today, or you can share an appreciation.
for someone in the room in something that they did during their time today. Or you can share an apology. Like if you feel like you have a miss on something you intended to do and didn't live up to that, you can share that. So you're sharing aha, something you learned, an appreciation for somebody else, or an apology. Not all three, you pick one. Who would like to start something?
I have an appreciation for the Alma Group. Big time.
Thank you, Eve. Who would like to go next?
I will say that I have appreciation for each and every one of you. This today allowed me to, I guess, get closer to each of you. I feel like I know something more, and I think that that allows for just, I'm all about closeness and I'm all about working together, so I'm excited about that. So that is my appreciation. I appreciate each and every one. So thank you.
I guess I will. I will throw out an aha in that I had to learn a lot about who I did not, like you get to know folks, you learned a lot about folks and you person things, but getting to know a little bit more about his own family life also. That our therapist will probably name. We will be sitting here having theme songs for the next board meeting. It's been a great add-on.
I'll share an appreciation just for the last 25 minutes. That stuff's not easy. I know it felt rushed. I appreciate everybody trying to work through it. And I think we're closer than we've been, certainly in the last 2 weeks, to having some real clarity on what's most important and what's going on.
I'm gonna stick with my strict adherence to breaking the rules and you too. Doing an apology. Yeah, I can't. I told you it's my DNA, it's not my fault. I do an apology to Kareem and Mary for not hearing them. For the grace and then the time that we had today.
I'll just say I have an appreciation not only for the Alma Group just as a group, but for the quality of candidates that they have given us, for the integrity of the process. I am just going in a little more detail in saying that the level of detail and integrity that they brought to this process to help us identify our next superintendent.
I have an appreciation for each of you because I learned something about you differently than I knew before. But I had apprehensions the other day. I had apprehensions.
I like that. I like that too.
It's very difficult to be coming into a different, very tough. And I think that we have moved the needle and set the needle aside and are really committed to working together, which makes me feel very, very appreciative of each of you and your talents and gifts. So I want to thank you because it's not easy. It's not easy to be veterans and know how something's going. You got these people like chihuahuas napping at your legs. But I appreciate that. I appreciate each of your the things that you bring to the table, and I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, having no other business before us, the Ferris meeting adjourned. Go Bengals. And
Go Browns.
we'll see you over soon.
Where are the Browns?